let's do our oh no, yeah, we've got topics here. Okay, we get to do topics. So Luke wasn't there. I kind of feel bad for not inviting you.
To what?
You probably would have wanted to come.
The full projector wall thing?
The world's largest gaming displays. Do you know the Weird Al song?
Which one?
Frank's 2,000-inch TV?
I don't think so.
Hold on.
It sounds awesome.
Does it have a music video? I actually don't know if this has a music video. It would appear that it does not. But it's a Weird Al song from, I want to say, the late 90s or something like that. Anyway, the point is that he sings this song about, kind of poking fun at keeping up with the Joneses and flaunting your wealth through fancy electronics. And it's sort of this guy who buys this endgame TV that can only be delivered through just utterly decadent means. And, but thank God I can watch The Simpsons from 30 blocks away. But anyway, so it's really funny because it's Weird Al and he's always funny.
So is what you're trying to say is that those pictures of that were edited?
No.
Oh.
What I'm trying to say is that display was 2,070 inches. We did it. We made Frank's 2,000-inch TV.
That's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, it ended up being, I forget the exact number, so don't quote me on this. Just wait to watch the video if you want to know the exact numbers. But it was something like 170 feet wide. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense, but wow.
By 30-something feet tall. Absolutely enormous. And, okay, right, Dan was there.
Yeah.
Dan, I'm going to say something that's going to sound controversial, and then there's no pressure to agree with me, but I would love to hear your take. One of the games that we played on it was Flight Simulator, and I felt that it was more immersive than VR.
Depends on so I was playing Microsoft Flight Simulator. So I can't remember if I even watched anybody do it. I'm not sure. I would say no, in my opinion. Certainly not playing it. I felt very claustrophobic in the cockpit. It seemed it wasn't kind of far back enough. Maybe if we had tweaked the settings, then it would be a little bit better. Looking around wasn't really possible in the cockpit. Maybe if I turned my head, something like that.
That's a really wide, flat display.
I would say it's a different kind of immersive to VR. VR is like you're sitting there, and this was kind of like the next best thing.
This is everywhere.
It was kind of more like it wasn't as presence and as real as being in VR. Oops.
So I played some of the other games, but I didn't actually play Flight Sim.
Mm-hmm.
I watched Dan play Flight Sim. So I was I was the passenger of the plane, and maybe the fact that I didn't have to be focused on the middle.
You can look around.
And I could really look around out over what feel like life-size vistas, but because the display was so large that it occupied almost my entire field of view, even moving my head around a little bit, the sense of scale was incredible.
I got that a lot too.
And I wasn't looking through a periscope, and modern VR headsets have reached a point where the field of view is pretty good.
That's right. Yeah.
But it wasn't even close. But it isn't even close to that experience of having
genuine vastness.
You actually get the full FOV of your eyes, and there's no headset, and you're there. I think I kind of got that feeling, the same sort of feeling of being the passenger and just kind of looking, but I'm focused dead ahead.
Yes.
My entire field of view is just Langley.
And that's the thing, right? Is that when I'm playing a game in VR, this doesn't bother me. because I'm focused on this.
Yeah.
And if I want to see something else, I'll do what I would do in real life, because we can only achieve our maximum resolution over what is it, like a 4% of the area we can see,
It's
and
not a lot.
only within like a certain area. Like it's not actually out here that you would turn your head anyway. So that's really natural. But if I was an observer through that tunnel, I wouldn't like it. Whereas being an observer on the giant wall,
There's
was
like
cool.
more proper terms for this. I don't think this is the right term, but suspension of disbelief I think is also hurt by something strapped onto your head. Like you're always going to be at least somewhat aware. Like, yeah, you might be convinced that the plank, you're not convinced, but your brain might be freaking out because you're walking on a plank above a high rise and your brain's like, I don't want to fall, even though you know you're in VR. But you have this thing strapped to your face. There's a lot of cues to kind of remind you that it's not what's actually happening.
Thinking back, there was a number of moments where, I don't know, everything just kind of fell away, because you're looking at a monitor, but you're focused quite close to you, and you don't have a headset, so you don't have any of the perception of things touching you, or that you're wearing a headset. That's kind of harder to forget. But when you're in front of basically just this window that goes into the sky, I think that kind of dissociation happens a hell of a lot faster than with anything I've felt before.
I did not feel like I was looking at a wall.
It didn't
When
look like a
Flight
monitor.
Simulator.
It looked like I was flying a window into something else.
And the sense of motion that I got was so much more convincing than at least any other flat display that I have ever experienced, just because of the sheer vastness of it. It was a really cool setup. We actually ended up shooting 2 videos that day instead of just one. We shot one that's like a LAN center / badminton center update, because people
I
had...
had to approve Dan's time for this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
People had to. People had more questions that they raised than they felt were answered by the first video. So we
Fair
ended
enough.
up talking. Actually, I don't think I've really addressed anyone's questions from the first video. But the
over
point is, there's cool stuff, and we talk about it. Dan goes through some of the networking stuff. Our armored fiber is on site, ready for installation. So we do a little autopsy on the fiber that we're going to be rolling out and stuff like that. It's a really cool video. And then at the end of it, Chase shows off kind of what we have planned for a big projector gaming console corner. And we grabbed the 120-inch screen from that used to be in my basement, and we put that up, and then we go, yeah, but it's dark enough in here, we could go bigger. And we kind of just throw as big of an image as we conceivably can with the projector that I had in my basement at the wall, until we realize, okay, yeah, you can only go so big no matter how dark it is before it starts to look washed out and garbo, right? Then we go from 2,700 lumens to working with an AV company that specializes in these kinds of deployments to a multi-projector 12,000 lumen setup. And yeah, there's no way to... There's nothing I can say other than it's unlike anything I've ever experienced.
I kind of did want to see it, but
I'm sorry.
no.
Can you imagine that at 240 hertz?
I know, it was only at 60.
HDR, 4K, 240 hertz,
Yeah, we'll have
2,000 inch walls.
I guess what you're saying is you want to redo it.
Yeah, do it better.
Yeah, do
Buy
it better.
a bigger building.
No.
No.
That's going to be a no. Thank you for the suggestion, though, Dan. Appreciate you.
You could use it for the new town.
There's not going to be a new town.
Yeah.
None of these people
We're
know
gonna
what
need
you're
some big
talking
buildings.
about. It's on the pre-show.
That makes it better.
No, inside jokes are not good.
Currently watching live surrounded by a 40-foot video wall at Times Square.
Nice.
Linus, what's your limit on display sizes? If TCL makes a 200-inch TV, will you get one?
I won't have a big enough room for one. The limit on display sizes is dictated by your space. I think the smallest Samsung wall last time around, when I was looking into it, and I was like, oh, I kind of want one.
Yeah.
I think it was 143 inches, and the issue for me was that at 16 by 9, that was kind of too big for my space. At a wider aspect ratio, 143 inches would probably be fine, because as it turns out, and we learned this when we set up the big display, as it turns out, the wider you go, the shockingly little difference there is between the one part of that right angle triangle, or the bottom of the right angle triangle, and the diagonal.
Yeah.
Like the difference between our diagonal and our bottom was only like 3 feet or something like that at that width. So I could probably handle like 140, 150 inch display if it was a wider aspect ratio. But if I had to go 16 by 9, 120 to 130 is probably about as big as I can go in that theater room, which seats comfortably about 7 to 9 people. So if you had a larger room, like I sat in this amazing theater room virtually in the Big Screen Beyond app, that was like, it was like set up like you were a mega baller and you had like a theater room to hold your like orgies in or something. Like it was enormous.
With
and had
your
all this
neighbor's wife.
like soft tiered seating everywhere and everything.
It's very relatable.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, sitting in
Don't we
there,
all
I
have
was
that?
like, I would need a 150 to 200 inch display at the front of this for it to be big enough that everyone could enjoy it.
And an open relationship.
That too.
It's very progressive. That's all Luke spends.
Is this show over yet?
Luke
can we
doesn't.
be done?
Luke doesn't spend money on anything but that. That's why you can't buy anything.
Oh boy.
Anyway, yeah, I think that for most reasonable sized rooms, we're there. And talking to display manufacturers, they seem to be kind of acknowledging that. Like Hisense seems to really envision itself as competing more in the premium space rather than competing in the big but cheap space, because that's not going to be a space that really exists anymore in a little while. Everyone's just going to have a big affordable TV.
Yeah.
So you better get real good real fast. The good news is, man, that's 100,
good for us.
That 100 inch or 110, yeah, the 110 inch that they had at CES looked amazing.